You're listening to Living with Lewy. Well, hello, folks, and welcome to this edition of Living with Lewy. It is October, and that is Lewy Body Dementia Awareness Month. And so when we started the podcast, to try to help raise awareness to Lewy body dementia and what it's like to live with this. In honor of Lewy Body Awareness Month and to help spread awareness, I'd like for you to try to share the podcast with someone that you know or someone that you might care for that has Lewy body, and help to spread the awareness. I've also said that you can email me at livingwithlewypodcast@yahoo.com, and I am more than happy to send people what educational resources I have, because one of the things that I've been an advocate for is understanding the disease. I have certainly learned a tremendous amount about myself, how living with Lewy was going to be, and I've also learned a lot about what I can do to kind of help manage this as it continues to move forward. As I move forward in my journey, I have come to realize that physical activity, physical therapy and the occupational therapy, speech therapy that I received certainly has been a tremendous help to me. And I certainly urge others to engage in that type of activity as well. I know that there's a number of things that they have found with working with me was with my balance and whatnot, or larger movement exercises, and they of course you need to have a little supervision because they push the limits of your balance to try to reprogram your brain to accept commands in a different fashion. You've heard me refer to this before, neuroplasticity, and that's the brain's ability to rewire. I know that that's been just a huge understanding that I came to. I've also learned a number of techniques to help me to manage some of the things that are problematic. I'll give you for instance, and I've talked about this in another episode also about frustration and anger. And I think that when you start losing dexterity, you start losing the different things that you used to be able to do. That becomes frustrating. The frustration then becomes anger, and sometimes it's directed at the people we love the most. And believe me, that the people we love the most are the people we'd like to hurt the least. And we don't lash out because we want to. We can't control it. And one of the techniques that I learned was that I used to get frustrated about things that were happening during my day. And when my wife got home, I'd just dump it all on her. And, she has to manage a couple of optical locations. And so as a manager, being responsible for that is, I'm sure, stressful enough, let alone come home to have her husband unload a dump truck on her. Well, one of my therapists said, why don't you try writing down When something's frustrating you, write it down. Just keep adding things to that list. And maybe 30 minutes or so before your wife gets home, why don't you look at that list and see how many of those things um, she really needs to know about? Well, that certainly made it so that I didn't have anywhere near the load uh, that I had before. Because a lot of those things are actually smaller things that, I'll give you a for instance. I pulled the silverware um, holder out of the dishwasher the other day and thought, well, gee, I'll start putting the dishes away. Well, somehow or another, I managed to clip one of the utensils just right, just enough to knock the basket full of silverware off of the kitchen counter, and then there went the clean silverware all over the kitchen floor. Well, that was frustrating. That was very frustrating. And was I angry? Yes, I was angry at myself because my dexterity had allowed that or my lack of dexterity had allowed that to happen. But was that something that I needed to hold on to and dump on my wife? No. That was something that I needed to pick the stuff up, clean it up, dry it, put it away. And you know what? After it's all over with, then that's over with. And 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 it's no longer something that's in that cart that I feel like I need to dump. That's just one of the things that I've learned to do. It's one of the ways that I try to help myself from being that angry, frustrated spouse. Um, and I see oftentimes in some of the Facebook groups that I have circulated around, I have seen where people will say, oh, my loved one lashes out, my loved one does this. And what medication do you think I should ask the doctor to put them on so that they're not like that or they don't do that? Well, the reality is I would ask you to question yourself on this. Are you trying to help the patient? Are you trying to help yourself as a caregiver to better manage how you interact with your loved one? Which is it? I think that too many times I see people make comments that are people who do not live with this disease, and they are speaking to you from an area of observation. They have no idea what's going on with you inside you. And one thing that I'm very thankful of is that I have a um, very good relationship with my wife, and I have done a great deal of homework into my own disease, and I've also spent a great deal of time with trying to understand how I can make my life or what's left of my life um, as enjoyable and as I can have it. And I think that having open conversations about some of the things that I experience and picking time as to when to maybe have those conversations. And sometimes when I go and talk to my wife about something, she goes, "Yeah, I know we've already talked about that." Yeah, I know, um, but I don't always remember that we've talked about it. So there's that. And then she'll be like, "Yeah, okay, I understand." Um, and she now knows that, hey, it's not something that I'm able to recall right now. So I'm I don't claim to have all the answers. I will tell you that I try to share with folks things that I've learned and things that have helped me. And so sharing those with others, I hopefully helps people to better understand their own loved ones and what they're experiencing, because there's a whole plethora of folks out there who really like to think that they know what's going on inside the brain of someone with Lewy body, and the reality is they spent uh, 10 minutes looking at the life with Lewy from the side of the lens that someone who lives with Lewy, they'd quickly find out that their knowledge is not anywhere near what they think it is. Um, so I've also advocated in some of my podcast episodes about trust your own research, do your own research, especially when it comes to medications. There's medications that are out there that people say, "Oh, try this," and you go and you look, and come to find out it's one of the medications that perhaps no one with Lewy body should have. And so, it, whatever it is, I think that doing your research and doing your due diligence into understanding it is probably key to feeling comfortable with whatever recommendations being made, and also to know um, about the drugs that you should not have. It's those of you that live with Lewy body, about the autonomic changes, and I will have to say that my autonomic system has acted up and has landed me in the emergency room. And what flabbergasts me is that you go into the emergency room and they'll say, "Oh, well, mm, what's happening?" And you tell them you have Lewy body dementia, and they're like, "What?" Like, and they look at you and they're like, like you don't know what you're talking about, and it's really because they don't know anything about it. And rather than going, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've not heard of that," or something, no, they just rather make you feel uncomfortable. Um, and that's true with a lot of people that are in the medical field. And I know you can't be an expert on everything, but I have a whole lot of respect for someone who says, "Oh, I'm sorry. Can you tell me more about that? Because I'm not familiar with it." And um, great news when someone has that type of an attitude towards it, then that gives a golden opportunity to spread awareness. And you may not answer everything, but you may pique their curiosity enough to get them to go out and do a little research into what that entails. And so I have a great deal of respect for someone who can look at you and say, "Well, gee, can you tell me more about it? Because I don't know." And that's okay. I know you can't know everything, and nobody does. And I think having your mind open is one thing, but I think that it really I know that for instance, I had a visit with a cardiologist, and I asked him whether or not the recent problems that I was experiencing with my pulse rate fluctuating or not, could that be um, part of my autonomic changes that are happening with my Lewy body? And immediately he's like, no. And I said, okay. I said, I'm just, and then he's like, there's nothing wrong with you. And basically blew me off. And, you know, to me, it would have been a lot better if he'd have said, gee, can you tell me more about what it is that you're inquiring about? Because it was clear to me that he had absolutely no knowledge of Lewy body and how it affects your autonomic system. And instead of being willing to confront that, no, he'd rather make me feel like I'm wasting his time. Well, he was in a group that I've had a prior experience with one of the other cardiologists in the office. And so I refused to follow up visit with this guy and went back to the guy that I know. And immediately this cardiologist was like, um, I'm familiar with Lewy body and I'm familiar with the autonomics. And he said, but I really don't think that that's what's happening here. Not saying that that's not, but he said it's not what he was thinking. Well, it's so much nicer to talk to somebody when they have some idea of what's going on with you instead of someone who has no idea and has no desire to educate themselves before they start rendering an opinion. And so doing your own research and understanding what's going on with you is key. I don't think that there's anything better than having knowledge. Knowledge, as someone said to me in an email here just the other day, that knowledge is power. Yes, it is. And one of the things that really touched me was this person who reached out to me and sent me an email message. Um, they thanked me because they said that I inspired them, and I certainly, if I can help one, I'm happy. If I can help many, that's even better yet. So just remember that this is the Lewy Body Awareness Month, and try your best to spread some awareness of Lewy body, or if someone that you know, and just refer them to this podcast or to, there's a number of different places where you can get information. But I also am more than willing to send people information anytime they want to ask for it. It can be found on Lewy Body Podcast Facebook page, the Lewy Body Podcast Facebook group, or you can email me at livingwithlewypodcast@yahoo.com. So I'm more than happy to share what material I have here, some of the things that that I utilize, and then I share those resources also in my in the Facebook group. And so, by all means, let's raise some awareness to what is actually happening with this disease, Lewy body dementia, and what it's like to live with Lewy body. We'd like to thank you for joining us for this edition of Living with Lewy. Please remember, folks, that we are 100% voluntarily funded by our listeners. So please go to the link at the bottom of your favorite podcast provider, and you'll find a link there that says support the show, or you can find us on GoFundMe under Living with Lewy Podcast, and every dollar counts, and every dollar helps. So please take a minute and go in and support the show, we certainly would appreciate it. The only thing we try to do is cover our operating costs and equipment maintenance costs. So we thank you and have a great day.